Welcome to episode 291 of the Working Fans Podcast, where there's a lot to talk about this week. CM Punk, Dark Side of the Ring, more Evolve, and we are doing it without Dave, who is out on family business today. So before we get to the show, a lot of people that watch don't subscribe. So if you enjoy our videos, please hit that subscribe button so you know the next time we go live talking about wrestling. And we are going to start today talking about Dark Side of the Ring, Season 6, Episode 1, that featured Mick Foley, Hell in a Cell, and Dave and myself thought, much like the Montreal Screwjob, I don't know how much new ground this episode is going to break. And I was pleasantly surprised that they did bring a different angle to it, which Dark Side of the Ring is always good for. Their recreations that they do throughout the episode set the tone well. I thought it was great to hear from his family, how they talked about it. Much was made of how his kids were involved and shown in Beyond the Mat and how they reacted to those chair shots. And this one really kind of gave you the idea of how normal a family structure Mick Foley had given the business that he's in and the amount of concern they had when they didn't hear from him at a regular time. This was the Hell in a Cell match that really it made Mick Foley's career. They say during the episode, when Mick Foley's career is summed up, this is going to be one of those top things. And it was interesting just the way they showed everything, hearing from the closeness he had with his wife and how she reacted and trying to get a hold of the WWF. If I'm kind of rambling here because this was such a good start to the season, and I think it lived up to all the expectations I had for it. So going forward, very much looking forward to the episodes they will be showing. We're going to go to our first comparison this week, and Dave put up a good one. Lex Luger, Davey Boy Smith. I really enjoy this one because these are two big body guys from that 80s and 90s era, wrestled in various promotions, had top spots in various promotions as well. I think if I were to pick, though, I might lean towards Davey Boy Smith just because I feel like he was in a few more promotions. And given that he had that closeness to Bret Hart, he was able to stay in relatively good spots. It's not only that closeness to Bret Hart, but how good he was in the ring. Lex Luger, for years, his attitude held him back and sometimes perceived charisma. You'll remember the Lex Express was a big thing when he was in WWF, and now we hear years later that he hated it. You know, not always the best on the mic. Davey, I wouldn't say was the best on the mic, but he wasn't bad. Lex Luger had obviously the Allocades comment, and he's had other misspeaks on the mic that have kind of hurt him in perception. But this guy, if you were a fan of wrestling in the 80s and 90s, there's a chance you were a Lex Luger fan. I remember Lex Luger being featured in the WCW comic book and me thinking how he was such a big guy. Then you had him go to the WWF, became the narcissist. Then he morphed into red, white, and blue Lex Luger. Then he goes back to WCW. Top guy ends up in the NWO. And, you know, this year being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2025. But if I had to pick between these two, I'm going to pick Davey Boy Smith. Let us know your pick in the comments. And for the past 4 weeks on the podcast, I have been talking about WWE Evolve. This, like we've said, it feels like the NXT to NXT. This is truly developmental on Tubi Free TV. Dave has not tuned in to watch it yet, that I know. But I will say that episode 4 of Evolve, they are finally, I think, as a regular viewer, starting to turn that corner. You're seeing the identity that they have, that they're going to have these new talents in there, that they're going to have performers from the main roster, from NXT on the lower end of things that they can feature on here. Like they had Wolfgang from Gallus this week. You're going to have Joe Coffey next week. I think when you have a roster as big as the WWE has, and you want to make some of these newer talents, like you can hear from a lot of their promos that they sound like NIL signings. A lot of the guys are coming from football, a lot of the women kind of coming from cheerleading. So these are the people I think that are newer to the company, as well as like a Kylie Ray who's been wrestling for a while. You got a Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes in Swipe Right that I'm personally happy to see featured because they were featured a lot up in the Beyond Wrestling. And seeing guys, we've called a match for Brad Baylor. It's going to be much the same thing I'm going to say for Megan Bain later. Being able to see these talents on an indie level and then see them featured on TV is great. And this is going to be a place for WWE to test out some of these indie guys. Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes are two guys that I feel like are going to move up quickly and, really make a name for themselves quicker than they might have otherwise before Evolve came along. Other notes from this episode: referee Jessica Carr. You'll know her as the blonde female referee featured a lot on WWE TV. Made her in-ring debut as Kalax, or Kalix. It's Kalyx. Good to see that. A lot of these refs, are either wrestlers or former wrestlers. And I'm sure when their dream was to get to the WWE, they might not have expected to end up as a referee. And it's great to see there's at least a spot for Jessica Carr to be able to wrestle if she so wants to. Good to see Swipe Right being featured, like I said. And the big thing for all of episode 4, they're hyping a former OG Evolve champ coming back, and it is Timothy Thatcher in the main event. I thought this was great to see because he has that connection to Evolve from before. He has that connection to WWE. It's good to see them welcoming him back for something and getting featured in this way. So I would say episode 4 of Evolve, if you want to get in, if you want to give it a chance, start with episode 4. For me, it's just been the steady building from 1 to 3 at this point. It's found its identity. I think it's going to be a great show. And speaking of great, Dave put up another great comparison: Smoking Guns and the Samoan SWAT Team. And I personally like this because Dave and myself, we've been doing the Raw vaults. There's been a lot of the Smoking Guns and the Head Shrinkers at that point coming off of WrestleMania 9, going into King of the Ring 93. And we've seen various matchups of these teams. You've got Money Inc. in there as well. And this comparison is great because obviously the Head Shrinkers, any Samoan in wrestling known as a certified badass. But then you look at the other side and you've got Bart Gunn, who won the Brawl for All, showed his toughness there, had a career in Japan, and Billy Gunn, who is still wrestling to this day in phenomenal shape. And the Smoking Guns at this time, they were a fun tag team. They had the cowboy gimmick. They came in with the 6 shooters, the fireworks. But you're putting them up against the Head Shrinkers, the Samoan SWAT Team. No matter what you call them, they, to me, are going to be the pick here because even though the Smoking Guns are a great team, they had more the air of fun about them. the badasses known to get the job done. You can see the, you know, I'm struggling for the word right now, but you can see their attitude in Jacob Fatu. You can see it in Solo Sikoa. That newer bloodline head shrinkers. Let us know which team you are in the comments. Of course, it's got to be a solo show, so I'm going to be stuttering and spurting. But somebody that you might have even expected to have that same reaction was CM Punk on WWE SmackDown this week. This was big because getting into WrestleMania season, you're going to have those contract signing events and segments. And this week, the contract was signed between CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. And this is very notable because, as we saw during the segment, and it was almost like Paul Heyman breaking character a little bit, showing CM Punk that he is going to close the show out at WrestleMania. If you know wrestling and you know CM Punk, you know one of the big complaints he had was that he never main evented a WrestleMania. And there was back where he wrestled that match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And the argument, I believe, was made to him at that time that wrestling The Undertaker is like a main event. But we know in wrestling, the main event is always what's considered to close out the show. If you want to equate it to music, it's who's headlining the concert. Same with comedy, who's your headliner. So it's known that this is a big deal to CM Punk. You saw him get emotional about it in the ring. I thought everybody played their part perfectly. Roman Reigns, the cocky, confident winner who I think it's like 10 WrestleManias in a row he's been at the top of. You saw Seth Rollins getting mad about CM Punk's emotion about main eventing WrestleMania. And that's fit with how Seth Rollins has viewed CM Punk this whole time. So I think we're building up to WrestleMania in a great way. It's less than a month away. I think it's almost like 20 days away. Hopefully, we are going to pivot and bring in a new sponsor, perhaps for the WrestleMania season. If you want to sponsor our podcast, drop us a line at workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. And if you have a podcast, a business, or something you want to promote, give us a holler. And you've seen how we do with the Game Up commercials. You've seen how we've done with the authors. We would love to bring you in. And last week, we did a comparison between Bob Backlund and Bruno Sammartino. I don't even know if it was last week, but it was recently. And it took off with the people. So this week, I had the idea. Why not compare Bob Backlund and Harley Race? These guys, two of the top champs in the late 70s, early 80s. Harley Race, known as a tough guy, known to be great in the ring, one of those dominant NWA champions. Bob Backlund, good grappler, known to be a great wrestler, held that WWF championship and WWF championship, I believe. It might have just been the old one, but either way, known as a big WWF champion. These two have wrestled before. Do I know the outcome? Of course I don't, because you would have thought I would have researched that before this. But I was mainly loving this comparison because Bob Backlund, love watching his matches. You would think of, on the surface, Harley Race being the tougher guy, but knowing how good a wrestler Backlund is, and Backlund having that conditioning, like Backlund wrestling well into the 90s. I have seen this guy at an airport before leaving for an event, working out in the airport with his ab wheel. One of the all-time great athletes. And when you're looking at this, you might think you're going to pick Harley Race if you watched a lot of NWA. I would think you might think you're going to pick Bob Backlund if you watched a lot of WWF. I want to look this match up personally because For me, it's hard to pick. Is it going to be Harley's strength that's going to win out? Or is it going to be Backlund's supreme wrestling ability? Both men went over to Japan. And if I'm forced to pick somebody, I'm almost going to have to go with Backlund because Backlund you wrestled that UWFI in Japan, which is almost like the worked MMA and wrestling. Not taking anything away from Harley, but I would have to go with Backlund. It's a tough call to make. And what's even tougher is I decided to go one up on the old school comparisons. And why not compare Bob Backlund with Jack Briscoe? I thought about this because when you think Harley Race, you think almost the more tough guy wrestler, not not an even apples to apples matchup with Backlund, but you want to go great wrestler who was an NWA champion, who was an NCAA champion. Looking at Jack Briscoe. Haven't watched a lot of Jack Briscoe matches, but from the lore I hear about these two, this feels like it would be a great matchup. If you've seen this matchup, let us know in the comments. Or who do you think would win this? I would be very interested with this one as well. I think I'm going to have to go with Backlund just because I haven't seen as much of Jack Briscoe. But I feel like this would be, a battle. And this would be definitely a match to see. I'm going to look it up on YouTube after this, but let us know your pick in the comments. Let us know your pick for Bob Backlund versus Harley Race in the comments as well. And we flew solo today. Dave doing family stuff on his own. I've had a tough week. The kittens that you see or saw rolling around here they both passed away this week, and it's been a very tough adjustment. My head was elsewhere. Didn't get Dave the listening time. Dave will be back with me next week. Also, our recording schedule is going to change again because I am going back to my old job in the warehouse at work. So we will probably go back to recording on Fridays. This week, we are going to get to King of the Ring 1993 for our Digging in the WWE Vault segment. And I wanted to end today's show with something a little different since I am riding solo. And I want to talk about three things I'm looking forward to this week. First thing I'm looking forward to this week is Rey Fenix debuting next week on SmackDown. Last week, you heard Dave and I discussing the promos. Will he debut with Penta? Will he debut on SmackDown? I like seeing him debut on SmackDown. It's going to give him his own identity for a little while. The thing I want to know is who is Rey Fenix going to take on in his first match? I haven't been watching enough SmackDown lately, so I kind of want to reach out to the people about this. Who do you think is a likely first opponent for Rey Fenix? And I like that they're bringing him in before WrestleMania, giving him time to get established, and then he could be featured somewhere on the WrestleMania card. Even if it's on the pre-show, being on the WrestleMania pre-show, you're not on the main card, but you're still featured. Still a great spot. I can't wait to see what's ahead for Phoenix. This week on Dark Side of the Ring, they're going to be talking Ludwig Borga, Tony Hallman, and this guy had a short run in the WWE, had featured well, was a supreme heel, but the stories about his SS tattoo have gotten, they've become bigger lore about him than his WWF career. From what I heard in an interview with one of the creators of Dark Side of the Ring, his career after wrestling is almost wilder than his in-ring. And that's exactly what we said about Lance Von Erich when the Lance by Chance book came out. Some of these guys have these in-ring careers that are notable that you'll remember for years. But then it's the story of the life they live outside of the ring that's almost way more compelling and interesting. So check out the Lance by Chance book. Check out the Ludwig Borga episode this week on Dark Side of the Ring. And the last thing that I'm excited about is something that myself and the man called Dave will be previewing next week, AEW Dynasty. And I watched a little bit of Collision last night. I'm excited for this. Moxley versus Strickland in ring. You've got Tony Storm versus Megan Bayne, which, much like I was talking about with Brad Baylor earlier, it's cool that we've been able to call these matches with these talents that are not only featured on WWE Evolve, but are featured on AEW. Megan Bayne, since coming into AEW, has been featured amazing. And, you know, one of the complaints we've had about AEW is not always staying consistent with who they push. Tony Storm had a great storyline and feud last year with Mariah May. Moving into this Megan Bayne rivalry, I'm just loving seeing it. And even if I don't watch AEW week to week, even if we do sometimes criticize some of the decisions that are made, I will say that when AEW puts out a pay-per-view, I will get it because their pay-per-views are great. Tony Khan loads up the shows, even if they run late. You are getting, you know, the bang for your buck. You are getting a good wrestling product. Some things may fall short, but overall, the product is great. And AEW Dynasty, I think, is going to be another great pay-per-view. So thank you for joining us today, guys. And like we said, the majority of the people that watch us aren't subscribed. So please, if you enjoy the video you saw today and you want to keep up with more of our content, we'll be bringing back the live watch-alongs at some point. We have long-form videos, short-form videos, interviews with wrestlers. But most importantly, we do this for the love of wrestling, and we like shouting out other wrestling creators. So I'm going to play a couple quick commercials for some authors that we have featured on our show, as well as you may know us as the Working Fans Podcast. But when we're not doing this, we have a commentary gig.
Hey fans, it's the man they call Dave with producer Joe, and you probably know us as the commentary team for New Heights Pro Wrestling, but when we're not doing that, we got a podcast.
That is the Working Fans Podcast, where we talk pro wrestling, comedy, MMA, and so much more.
And tell them about that signature segment.
Oh, you talk about the 531?
You know I am.
That is a homegrown creation that has been our namesake. And if you want to know our namesake, we got Chevy, AJ Strange Brew, as well as the two of us.
And why don't you go to our channel, like, subscribe, show us some love.
Rate, review, all of it. Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, professional wrestling in our world. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.
Hey, all you got young wrestling fans out there, listen, Old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle. Like that. It's got some dead good stories in there about some dead good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.